So now we're ready to talk about block 1, which, if you remember, is the Roman stripe. And that was the block that looked like this. So you made your gauge swatch and you made certain that you were getting at least 6.5 stitches per inch and 9 rows per inch, or you were somewhere close to there. Just remember, your blocks should all come out about the same size so long as you are at a similar gauge with each one. And if you are close to my gauge, then your block should be right at about 6 inches by 6 inches, although some of that we will fix when we actually take the square itself and wet it and pin it out to dry. So now that we're ready to knit our first block, called the Roman stripe, it's time to really read our pattern. It says to cast on 32 stitches with color number 500 milk. And if you bought the kit from Black Sheep at Arinco, that would be the cotton in white. Each one has a ball band that tells you what color it is, but this one is milk. If you're using different yarn, like the Carlton, you could use purple or any color that you want. And really the color is just a suggestion. I think using the white makes it easier to learn to knit, and it might make it easier if you're just starting to knit to see what you're doing, but it's really up to you. My one recommendation is don't start with the darkest color. So it says to cast on 32 stitches with color 500 milk, and then it says to follow the chart and repeat stitches between the red lines or the stars in the writing 15 times. And then you're supposed to repeat the whole chart 7 times before you BO, which is bind off. Yes, BO is bind off when it comes to knitting. So we are going to go ahead and start with row 1 and cast on our 32 stitches. And we're going to do exactly what our chart says. We'll slip that first stitch knitwise and then knit all the way across. And then on the return row, we'll slip the first stitch purlwise and then purl all the way across. You can either follow the chart or the written directions, your choice. I like the charts because I'm more visual. You might like the written directions because that's what you need. Either way is perfectly fine. If you're having trouble reading your chart, please go back to the video about how to read a chart and refresh your memory. Okay, we've cast on our 32 stitches, and now it's time to follow the chart. So the chart says that you are going to slip 1 and then knit all the way across. So I'm going to slip 1 knitwise, and remember to slip 1 knitwise, you just take your needle and insert it from left to right, front to back, just like we did to knit. And slip it from the working needle in your left hand to the working needle in your right hand. And that's how you slip. Now we're going to knit all the way across. Now it's time to work row 2. I've reached the end of my row and I've turned my work. So now I'm going to slip the first stitch and I'm going to slip it purlwise. So to do that, I'm just going to insert my needle from right to left and back to front, just like we would to purl. And then I'm going to slip that stitch from my left needle to my right needle. And that's all that a slip is. And now I'm supposed to purl all the way across the row. So I'm going to purl across the row. So I'm going to do what the chart says now. I have knit my first row, I have purled my second row, which means I'm ready to start row 3. So to slip a stitch, all I'm going to do is insert my needle and slip it knitwise. If it doesn't tell you whether to slip it knitwise or purlwise, you can make your own choice for that. To slip it knitwise, all I do is insert my needle tip in the front of that stitch, just like I'm going to knit, but instead of wrapping the yarn around it to knit, I slip it to my other needle. That's all that means. Next, I am going to knit a stitch and then purl a stitch. And again, because I still have lots of stitches left to work in this row, I have to repeat what it tells me to do between those red lines. So I will knit a stitch and purl a stitch all the way across that row until I have worked every stitch that I can in pairs of 2. And when I get all the way across the row, I'm going to find that I have 1 stitch left. So here I am at the end of my row. I have 1 stitch left, and I have to do something different with it because I can't do a knit and purl repeat like I had done all the way across the rest of this row. So I'm going to move my work and read my chart, and it tells me that that last stitch at the end of row 3 should be a knit stitch. So I'm going to knit that stitch. So this is what our work looks like so far. You can see there's, instead of just all the orderliness from the knits and the purls, doing a full knit row and a full purl row, you can see that we have some bumps from doing knit, purl, all the way across. So now we're going to read row 4. And row 4 says we're going to slip again. This time I'm going to slip purlwise because I'm on the back side of the work, and that's just how I do things. So to slip purlwise, you take the tip of your knitting needle, you insert it into your stitch, and you slip it from one needle to the other. And that's all that you do. And then we get ready to work our row. And it says that we are going to slip a stitch and then repeat purl, knit, until there's only 1 stitch left. So purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. So I only have that 1 stitch left again, and I need to do something with it. When I look at my chart or when I read my directions, it tells me that that very last stitch of that row should be purled. So I am going to purl that stitch. And here's what our work looks like so far. That's the right side. This is the wrong side, and I can tell because the very bottom has the smooth right side knit stitches, or the very bottom has the bumpy wrong side purl stitches. And we are ready to knit the next row. It says row 5, slip 1, and then knit. And because it says knit 2, and that's a repeat, and ends knit 1, I know that I'm just going to knit all the way across that row. So that's what I'm doing, just knitting all the way across that row. So now that we have knit all the way across the row with row 5, remember to slip the first stitch. It's time to do row 6, and row 6 says that we are going to slip the first stitch again. And remember, I slip it purlwise on the back, and all you do is stick that needle in, just like you're going to purl, and slide it over from the left needle to the right needle. And then my chart says, or my written directions say, that we would purl 2 and repeat all the way across and end purl 1. So that tells me we're just going to purl all the way across the row.